Hi there, Old and Surly here. Today I'm going to talk to you about another TIE Fighter mock that I found on Rebrickable. This one is by a creator known as Quarry's Workshop, and these are a paid set of instructions. These cost $5 on Rebrickable, and it builds what you see here, which is a 484 piece TIE Defender set. And I have to say, overall, it is a very nice looking, very well scaled set. This is scaled to match the 75300 current TIE fighter that is out on the market. So it blends very well if you're somebody like me that plans on displaying this in a various TIE fighter display area. It's got a lot of nice features that I do enjoy. He's built everything essentially from scratch on this. There's not a lot of pieces that you would say come directly from the building design of the standard TIE fighter. And that is both good and bad as we take a look at this. One thing that I do enjoy is the fact that you could base this off of the 75300 kit if you wanted to save a little bit of money. Maybe you've got an extra one, or you just want to work a little magic on your standard TIE fighter. But in actuality, only about 120, 130 pieces are actually common between the standard TIE fighter and this set. Obviously, some of the variety of pieces that you see on the cockpit are standard, but most of the other pieces are built based on his own intuitive design of trying to emulate a lot of those things. So I would almost say in this case, unless you've got an extra TIE Fighter kit handy, I would almost suggest just sourcing all of the parts for this straight off of Bricklink, because I think in the end you'd probably end up at about the same cost, and you wouldn't have just such a large amount of leftover pieces from the TIE Fighter kit, unless of course that's something you want. You know, maybe you're building mocks and things like that. And normally I'm on board with that. But in this case, when we're talking almost 200, 300 pieces left over that are not used by this, I think at that point there's a diminishing point of value for that. One thing in particular I do like is, as you can see here, he has done a great job of fully emulating and redesigning the cockpit. So this is not the same build that you would get in the TIE Fighter kit, especially because it has to mount on the rear to the actual wing assembly, as you see here. So he did a complete redesign on this and built it to scale and match the overall design. I think he did a very good job on that. One thing that he has done as well is inside the cockpit, he's added a little bit of his own special touches in there. For example, he actually uses a Clone Wars droid body as the actual control for the TIE fighter. In my case, I didn't have that piece, so I just went ahead and used a hinged piece. But as you can see there, he does a good job, basically going in there and recreating a very standard and nice build, as well as giving the TIE fighter pilot a little bit of an actual control kit that mounts right up in front of him and swivels up just as well. The top also does open up slightly. Of course, it is slightly limited based on the wings in place there. But as you can see, it does give you a lot of visibility, and you can easily put the TIE fighter pilot inside and out of the cockpit there. All of the wings are identical, so when you're building it, you will be duplicating this build 3 times. So that is probably, I won't say it's boring, it's actually very intuitive, and I enjoyed it. It's just something you will be doing 3 times. These do swivel slightly. These use those hinge pieces that have the click points, so you can get it just to the right angle that you need. And as you can see, everything mounts very well and essentially leverages the new design Technic connection points. So the wings themselves are very sturdy. And of course, they do have a little bit of the standard TIE engine design on the back. I added the small blue piece that's not required in his set. In fact, I'm looking to replace that with a red one to kind of emulate the red engine light that you see on the standard TIE fighter, for example. You see that right here in the corner here. So now to get into the things that I have to say I had a little concerns with. This is definitely not a playable set in my mind, and here's why. Overall, it is very nice looking, and it's well made, and he's done some very unique things in here. But my concern is where the cockpit actually connects. It tends to disconnect pretty regularly. In fact, what I did is I actually added an additional 2x3 brick in there to pull the cockpit out just a little bit more. And then I also added a couple of bricks on the bottom to allow this fighter to actually mount well on a display stand of some kind. If you were using a Lego brick type of display, I think it would be fine. But for somebody that likes to use these kind of risers, I think it works better with that little addition. And one thing I did find as I was assembling the three wings is, I mean, maybe it's just me and my gorilla hands, but I kept squeezing the cockpit a little bit too aggressively. And based on the way it's designed, it kind of crumbles in your hands. And I don't want to do that right now just because I don't want to have to put it back together again. But it's a little delicate. It's not delicate for normal, grasping it. Obviously, you can touch it and you can move it around and it's not going to fall off and it's not going to break. But if I was a younger Lego fan and I was swooshing this around and I was pulling the fighter pilot in and out many times, I think you would run into scenarios where you'd probably be putting this back together for them a few times just based on kind of rough handling by a younger fan. But from a display purpose or for maybe a slightly older fan that might be swooshing it around, I don't think there's any issues at all. So don't take that as a negative. I'd say it's just more of a caution that this is a great display piece and it's good for a swooshable play if you've got a child that you can kind of warn, hey, be a little more careful with this than you would with your standard Lego design. But then again, there hasn't been a TIE Defender in a number of years, and that might be why, is perhaps it's just something that Lego has not really been able to tie that final bow on to make it something that has that playability factor that they really try to push on a lot of their items. So again, the cost of the instructions are $5. It's, in my mind, a good value. It's a very well-designed set. It looks great. There's no click-fire missiles, things like that, so it makes a great displayable piece. The instructions are very clear. I had no problems as I was assembling it. It goes very smoothly, and it takes about an hour to an hour and a half, so not much more than a standard TIE Fighter build, even though you're adding about another 100 to 150 pieces. Again, I would recommend just going ahead and purchasing all the pieces off of Bricklink, unless there was a concern about the cost of the cockpit. Obviously, the cockpit, unique pieces, but those are readily available on Bricklink without any major costs. So I would say, just pick it up that way. Save yourself having a bunch of extra pieces that, unless you're prepared to use those in some way, just kind of go into a bin, never to be seen again. Overall, I would give this a very high grade. I look forward to more potential designs from Quarry's Workshop. I'm going to try out a few more in the future. If you have any questions or you'd like to see any other additional photos or some particular pieces of the build, please feel free to reach out. I do also have a speed build video available, so you can kind of watch this thing come together on the site. It's not as well videoed as I'd like. There was a slight bump in the camera, but I think it does get the point across of assembling this full design. Again, thanks for watching. This is Old and Surly saying have a great day. Keep building.